Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. It should come as no surprise that the number one team in our way too early top 25 is the Clemson Tigers, the national champions in 2018 and the national runners-up last year, going 14-1 before losing to LSU 42-25 in the national championship. And let me just start by saying that this 2020 squad that Dabo Swinney has put together is stacked. It is so stacked, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Trevor Lawrence is back. What more can you want? Arguably the best quarterback in the entire country, more than likely will be the number one overall draft pick in next year's NFL draft. He returns alongside Travis Etienne at running back. He surprised a lot of people by choosing to return for one more year at Clemson. And I think he didn't want to go out with a national championship loss, especially one by 17 points. Like we mentioned with Ohio State, who lost to Clemson in the college football playoff, I think the Tigers feel like they have some unfinished business left to accomplish in the 2020 season. So Etienne is back, one of the better running backs in the entire country. And even though they lose T. Higgins at wide receiver, they do get Amari Rodgers and Justin Ross back as well. They have a very experienced receiver corps with arguably the best quarterback and one of the best running backs in the country. I don't know many teams that will be able to stop Clemson in 2020. Defensively, Brent Venables, of course, one of the best defensive coordinators, if not the best, in all of college football, is back with the Tigers, leading a defense that only allowed 13.5 points per game last year. Now, of course, they have a very young defense this year. One that has a lot of key pieces to replace. But when you've got that great of a coaching mind on your sideline, I think the Tigers, once again, will have one of the better defenses in the entire country. You look at their 2020 schedule. First thing that sticks out to me, of course, is that they're going to have to play 8 games before they get a bye week. 8 games, so 2/3 of their season they will play before a bye week. And look, we know the ACC is not that competitive. We get it. We know it. And so when you look at this schedule, they'll be like, 8 weeks without a bye week, they're going to be fine. It's not like they play anybody. But still games that had to be played. Still games that Clemson could very well lose. You never know. And they open up the season against Georgia Tech on the road. They opened up the season against the Yellow Jackets last year and defeated them 52-14. And Jeff Collins, guys, I think he's the right man for the job. I think he's going to do great things with the Yellow Jackets. But when you try to change the offense drastically from that option offense to more of a pro-style offense, wanting to pass the ball a little bit more, that type of transition takes time. He's in the process of doing that down in Atlanta with the Yellow Jackets. Don't expect anything too crazy in week 1, but maybe the Yellow Jackets can put up more than 14 points against the Tigers this time. They then get Louisville. So that's back-to-back ACC conference games to start the season for Clemson. So there's no room for error right off the bat. I don't think many would expect much error, but still, you never know. And they don't have, the luxury of facing off against some cupcake opponents to open up their season. It's back-to-back conference games, and every conference game matters in their quest to win the ACC and get back to the college football playoff. Louisville's a team that, yes, they defeated 45-10 last year on the road, but a team that returns practically all of their offensive talent from last season. Mikael Cunningham at quarterback. You got Javion Hawkins. You got Tutu Atwell. So much speed and talent offensively for Scott Satterfield's squad that if Clemson's defense isn't up to par, if they're still trying to figure out some holes to fill and key pieces to replace, and maybe they struggle a little bit out of the gate, Louisville could come into Death Valley and give the Tigers a really good run for their money. I really would be terrified to face this Louisville offense. And as we mentioned in our Louisville schedule preview, that if somehow they came into Death Valley and pulled off this monster upset, they could win the Atlantic Division. They very well could. They would own the tiebreaker over the Tigers, and Louisville's schedule isn't that bad either. So this game on September 12th, many will overlook it. Many will write it in as an automatic Clemson win. But do not underestimate the power of Scott Satterfield and the Cardinals. They then get their first cupcake opponent against Akron on week 3, September 19th, and then an ACC championship rematch against Virginia at home, a team that Clemson defeated 62-17 last year. And unfortunately, Virginia this year in 2020 is going to be a little bit worse than the team they had last year. Not saying last year's team was bad. Went to the ACC title game, went to the Orange Bowl, and held their own against Florida. But they're going to take a step back in 2020. And unfortunately, they're going to have to go to Clemson, where they might get annihilated 62-17 again. When you look at the schedule, though, 3 of the first 4 games for Clemson are at home for them, so very, very favorable. They then get back-to-back road games at Boston College and at Florida State, 2 teams that are dealing with brand new head coaches. Boston College getting Jeff Hafley over from Ohio State. Florida State bringing in Mike Norvell over from Memphis, who's hoping to really rejuvenate that offense and make Florida State relevant again, both in the ACC and at the national level. They beat Boston College 59-7 last year. They beat Florida State 45-14 last year. Out of these 2 games, I would say Florida State with Mike Norvell is one that could pose the most difficult challenge out of those 2 road games against BC and the Seminoles. But I don't know if either are going to have enough to overtake the Tigers. I think Norvell can get there. I just think it's going to take them a little bit more time than just a handful of weeks. They then get back-to-back home games. So really a lot of home games in this first little stretch here for Clemson. Only 3 road games in their first 8 games. NC State, Syracuse rounding out those 2 before their bye week on Halloween. They beat NC State 55-10. They beat Syracuse 41-6 last year in a game that many thought could be the trendy upset pick. Syracuse in the Carrier Dome almost beat Clemson the year before. Maybe they can beat them at home. But then Syracuse got annihilated by Maryland, and all those thoughts disappeared. And Clemson made sure of that by going into the Carrier Dome and taking care of business. NC State has quarterback questions they've got to have answered. Syracuse had a disappointing 5-7 season after a 10-win season the year before. I think Dino Babers has his guys back on track. Probably should get to the postseason. But once again, coming to Death Valley, Clemson's one of the most difficult places to play in the country now, guys. And with weaker ACC opponents across the board and then playing in one of the weaker conferences across the board, not many teams can come in there and defeat them. They get a bye week on Halloween, and it comes just in time and at the right time. Because right after that bye week, they go on the road to take on Notre Dame. And here's what I have to say about Clemson's schedule. We talked about the bye week position, talked about the home games and the first 2 ACC games. Over the course of these schedule previews, we've looked at this and we've said, all right, every team has a tiny little stretch that could be tricky. You know, a slate of maybe 3, 4, sometimes 5 games that are going to be the most defining and most important games of their season. Clemson doesn't have that. Clemson does not have that here, where they have a slate of games that you look at and say, okay, this could be really tricky. If you want to call it one, it could maybe be this 3-game stretch from Virginia to Florida State. But even that's not really that complicated for a team like Clemson. We're not predicting any games here. That will come later. But if there's going to be one loss on Clemson's schedule, it's probably going to come here in South Bend at Notre Dame. We didn't say they're going to lose to Notre Dame. We're saying that if they were to lose a game, it would more than likely come right here because this is, without a doubt, the toughest test on Clemson's schedule. A Notre Dame team that could very well be top 10 in the country at this point, fighting for a college football playoff spot, hosting what could be the number 1 team in the country. These 2 teams have not met since 2015 in the regular season. Of course, they did meet in the college football playoff just a few years ago where Clemson took easy care of that. I believe it was 30-3. But in 2015, when they met in the regular season in Death Valley, Clemson won 24-22, an absolute thriller. In the middle of a monsoon, the bring your own guts game, as Dabo Swinney claimed it. Notre Dame returns a lot of talent this year, none bigger than their quarterback in Ian Book, and any issues that they have to work out, whether that's at the wide receiver position or anywhere defensively, should be worked out by the first week of November. This is a huge, huge, huge game. Huge for Notre Dame because if they want to make the college football playoff, they probably have to run the table, go undefeated, or at least be a 1-loss team. And they better hope that 1 loss isn't to Clemson. You know, if you can get a loss out of the way early. I don't know who they'd lose to, but you lose to somebody, but you have a resume-boosting win over Clemson? That's a great way to boost your resume and try to slip into the playoff. Or you go undefeated and a win over Clemson, absolutely, you're a shoo-in. There's no discussion about it. For Clemson, this isn't going to hurt them in the ACC standings. We know that. And even if it did, I don't know if there's a team in their division strong enough to overtake them, unless, of course, they somehow lost to Louisville. But I really don't think they can afford a loss here at Notre Dame with only 3 games remaining in a relatively weak schedule. You just never know, depending on how the playoff committee views things. This Notre Dame game is going to be tough. And I expect it to be a much closer game than that match we saw a few years ago in the college football playoff. Brian Kelly has struggled to win the big games before. This is an opportunity to kind of get the monkey off his back and say, yes, I can. I can win the big games. This is his chance right here. And luckily for the Fighting Irish, it's in South Bend. An electric atmosphere, a historic atmosphere, a fantastic matchup. This is the biggest game on Clemson's schedule, probably the toughest test that they will face until the postseason. Citadel on November 14th at Wake Forest, a team they defeated 52-3, and South Carolina at home, a team they defeated 38-3 last year as well. South Carolina is a team that could take a step forward with Bill Muschamp, but Clemson's hosting it in Death Valley. They travel to Wake Forest. They lose Jamie Newman. Never doubt Dave Clawson. Never going to doubt him. But Wake Forest is still a ways away, and I really don't think it's ever going to get to that elite status. Under Dave Clawson, they can be a consistent 7 or 8 win team. They might be able to consistently win in the postseason, but they're really not to the point where they're going to be elite enough to compete with the top dogs. FPI, of course, has Clemson going 12-0. What else would you expect? With a schedule like this and their toughest match against Notre Dame, of course the Football Power Index has them going 12-0. And with that, they'd make the ACC championship. They'd face off against someone from the Coastal. Could be Virginia Tech, could be North Carolina, could be Miami. Who knows? More than likely, they're favored in that game. They win that. They're back in the playoff probably as the number 1 team. And then, who knows? We said it at the beginning, we'll say it again. Clemson and Dabo Swinney, they have unfinished business. They're not used to getting popped in the mouth the way they did against LSU in last year's national championship. They want to come back. They want to assert their dominance. They want to capture yet another national title. And they certainly have the team and the schedule to do just that. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert as we conclude our schedule previews. Make sure to continue to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means everything to us. It goes such a long way for us, and we can't thank you enough. Make sure to check out everything down in the description below for exclusive college football news, content, and offers you do not want to miss. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.